Hello, Legend of the Samurai here with a Scorpion CX-5. This is a twin-style high-security lock, although not quite as nicely made as the ASA twin series, but it has 6 top pins, and those have gin bottle spool drivers and matched countermilling. And it also has 5 side pin sliders that are technically false-gated sliders interacting with a sidebar, although they suffer from a design flaw. That means the sidebar is not the part of this lock that is difficult to open. Alright, so I'll be tensioning counterclockwise and using a hook with a notch for a good balance on these pins. And there's a false set. I like to tap everything and make sure it's all up in the milling. Alright, and now I get to start floating these back, and I'm just letting the sidebar assist with the counter rotation. There's 6. One. Four. Five. Three. And 2. I'm just going to check everything. I think that's good, so I'll move on to the sidebar, just using a little side pin pick. And in these, 1 is solid, 2, 3 is solid, 4, 5, and we're open. So the problem with the false-gated sliders is the false gates are positioned such that they can't ever actually interact with the sidebar significantly. So the sidebar is pretty straightforward in this. Alright. Get this one apart. And these ones are grub screwed from the factory, conveniently. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, so here's our housing. Has that sidebar groove, but nothing else special there. And then on these, the Scorpion branded ones with the UL rating, they have all of this anti-drill protection, and some of those will fall out, so be careful for that. Then we have our sidebar, and this is just one giant chunk of steel with no reduced area sections to interact with the sliders. It's just the full width. Two little sidebar springs. And then down here we can see these side pins. They are springless, and as the key goes in and out, you can see them move back and forth. And technically, these last two, they have a false gate that the sidebar should fall into right at the beginning, but it doesn't, and these other two, or the other three, either have the true gate right at the beginning, or the true gate happens before the false gate, and so you can't ever reach it if you're picking carefully. And even on the ones where it happens before the false gate, if we knock all of these up to the top, they don't actually travel far enough up for that false gate to become visible. So even if you overlift those, you cannot fall into the false gate. So that's where this lock really falls down in terms of the second security mechanism. So here we have the true gate is the deep one, and then that false gate is shallower and narrower and happens below it, so you very rarely even reach it. Alright, so here's where those side pins or sliders go. Sidebar groove, top pins. There we can see that countermilling on both sides, and in the Scorpion versions, it is actually quite effective. Those pins lock in there. You can hold up the plug just from that countermilling on both sides. And on the Scorpion branded locks in particular, these gin bottle driver tips are in fact narrower than the main body and narrower than the key pins. So that is very similar to how ASA does their gin spools, and it allows them to lock into this milling very effectively, and you can't bypass it with the overlifting attack that is possible in some of the newer locks that are just branded CX-5 with no hyphen. All right. Close on these. So it is gin drivers in every chamber with countermilling. And then there are our springless sliders and the sidebar. So these locks can be an exercise in float picking. If you do get one, I fully recommend getting one that is not mastered if possible. This lock actually came heavily mastered, and I ended up recutting the key to the top level bitting and then repinning it with standard Schlage pin sizes, which is what Scorpion CX-5 use. If you have master wafers in these stacks, it is very simple to bind on one of them and then pop all of the others up, and you do not have to deal with any of the countermilling. You can just pick above the master wafers. So if you want a true challenge on these, you need to make sure it's an unmastered lock, and then all of the countermilling will come into play. All right, that is a Scorpion CX-5, picked and gutted. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.